After the 2024 Summer Olympics at the age of just 29, Germany's number one and long-standing goalkeeper Merle Frohms retired from international football, which surprised many not only due to her age but also in the convenience of the timing of it all. Some thought she couldn't handle being number two to Ann-Katrin Berger, who has been performing excellently for both club and country at that point. Others posited that 5 or 6 years of being a clear number one and not taking any breaks and not giving any other goalkeeper a chance essentially took a toll on her personal and professional life. But the thing is, right, Germany doesn't have a goalkeeper problem, and this is a luxury that they have, I think, compared to other countries, and that's what we're going to discuss here. Welcome to CWX, and here's a discussion on women's football. Now, Ann-Katrin Berger is still the theoretical number one in that goalkeeping position. However, she has recently decided to take a pause from the national team with an unknown return date, and she was absent in the most recent international friendlies against Switzerland and Italy. And at 34 years old, I think her time in the national team is limited, so we're looking into the future here. Ever since Christian Wuk took over after the Olympics, aside from Ann-Katrin Berger, there has been 4 other goalkeepers who have been nominated to the German national team, with Stina Johannes, Sophia Winkler, Maria Luisa Gross, and Anna Mahmutovic all being called up for the friendlies against England, Australia, Italy, and Switzerland between October and December. All these players, interestingly enough, are under 25 years old. Obviously, this is quite an interesting predicament for a national team to have when you have such talented and such capable goalkeepers who are at a very young age. Yet, even though they're all under 25, yet they have vast experience in club level, and the retirement of Merle Frohms and the pausing of Ann-Katrin Berger would give a chance to see all these players and their capabilities, basically. And especially with the 2025 European Championships coming in Switzerland, this is going to be a very, very tight competition, so to say, for a number one spot. So who are these candidates? The first player we're going to talk about is Stina Johannes. Eintracht Frankfurt's undisputed number one is probably the favorite to take the role as a number one or as a number two behind Ann-Katrin Berger. And obviously at 24 years old, she is the most experienced out of the lot. She took over the number one spot at Frankfurt, ironically, when Merle Frohms moved to VfL Wolfsburg to basically return to her old club, following the 2022 European Championships in England. And yeah, obviously, while she has performed decently ever since her move to Frankfurt, I mean, she's a reliable number one for her team fighting for the Champions League spots and, essentially being the third best team in that league. She has taken it up a notch for the season, and she has performed really admirably, like in the game against Bayern, where she saved penalty from Georgia Stanway, and Georgia Stanway usually don't miss penalties. She has performed, in comparison to last season, last season she was okay, I guess. I think the first half of the season she was way stronger, and in the second half she was kind of mid, I would say. But this season she has been really consistent, and even compared to last season's highs, this is already higher than that. Obviously still a massive upturn compared to last season. Last season they conceded 25 in the entire season. This season they only conceded 5, and going forward they're also really lethal. They've scored the most and conceded the least. I think she's probably going to be either a number one or a number two. Now let's move on to candidate number 2, Sophia Winkler. She's a recent addition to the DFB camp, coming in for Maria Luisa Gross, who was ill. I think she had an operation or something during the camp in October/November. She sat out the matches against England and Australia, but eventually she would make her debut against Switzerland at Letzigrund in Zurich, and she performed quite well. As in terms of how debuts go, that was a really good one because she won the match and she didn't concede. So all in all, it was a really good experience. But one thing that I think last season she came about I wouldn't say burst into the scene, but she was quietly racking up really decent performances in an Essen side who is probably only expected to finish mid-table. And they did in terms of how many points they scored. Last season they finished 4th, and Winkler in 22 games she only conceded 20 goals, even though the last game she conceded I don't know. But this season hasn't been that nice to Essen, I think, because all the other teams around them, like the likes of Leverkusen, Freiburg, RB Leipzig, and Werder Bremen. I think they've strengthened better, and yeah, obviously they've leapfrogged them. But yeah, when you look at it in a different perspective, I think Winkler has a lot of potential. She's only 22, and she can be like a really reliable number 2 or number 3, or even like the number 1 essentially in the future. Yeah, this situation is really quite a headache for whoever is going to be manager coming into the next tournaments. Now let's move on to Ena Mahmutovic, and to be honest, she's my favorite. The youngest of the lot has had the most scrutiny over the last month and a half or so. She was signed as like a competition for Maria Luisa Gross at Bayern, and due to Gross's disease and overall general health, she was basically thrown to the fire and became like this number 1 essentially for Bayern, even though I don't think she would expect that so early in her career at the club. She was one of the few players that were rescued by Bundesliga outfits when MSV Duisburg burst into flames, because the men's team were relegated from the 3rd division, from the Dritte Liga. Having played all games after Gross's diagnosis, Mahmutovic showed that she can be a reliable shot stopper, but there are moments where she needs more refinement. And for example, in her debut against Italy, she was quite unsure and she was quite nervous. I think that's probably the jitters coming in first international game. I think that's really understandable. And probably the game against Arsenal in a do-or-die situation where if Bayern won or drew the game, they would have been finishing first and they would definitely avoid the likes of Barcelona, Chelsea and Lyon. Yeah, but the thing is right with Mahmutovic, I still see her as a talented goalkeeper that just needs more time with her defense. Like she's in a new club and the number 1's been, on the sidelines, and she has to take these opportunities well. I mean, like, I genuinely think that out of all these players, I think I see Mahmutovic as the most like future-proof number 1 in terms of her capabilities and in terms of like growth. And I think come 2027 or 2029 World Cup, where she's been more refined, she has more Bundesliga experience, she has more time to gel with her teammates, I think she can be that number 1. But for now, she's probably number 3 or even a number 4 for the national team. And finally, we have good old Maria Luisa Gross, or Mala Gross. Over the last 2 seasons, she was Bayern's number 1 goalkeeper. And over those seasons, she only conceded like 15, 20 goals. Like last season, she only conceded like 8 the entire campaign. I think she kept clean sheets in 13 or 14 of them, which is crazy to think about. While that is the case, people think that she's not that good because her defenders are top-notch, basically. Like, you have the likes of Viggo Stottir, you have the likes of Linda Zemprat, you have Magdalena Eriksson, and the fullbacks in Julia Quinn, Katarina Naschenwang, Tuva Hansen. They've been really reliable on those fronts. So Gross's detraction comes from the fact that her defenders are really good, that she doesn't have to do much, basically. This season, however, saw a downturn in her fortunes because in mid-November, I think it was November 16th, it was made public that she was going to undergo a treatment for a tumor, a malignant one at that would sideline her for a while, basically. Although she was recently declared tumor-free and has a best-case scenario to return to training in January. But I don't think that's going to be realistic. I think she's going to take a bit more time to return. Obviously, being outside of the game for a while takes a toll, especially for professional players. And yeah, I think February probably be the more realistic estimate. I think she needs to take her time to recover optimally. I don't think she will be at the Euros this time around, but should her form continue to improve over the next few months, over the course of the season, probably dislodge Mahmutovic once again, I think she would be a consideration should anything happen to the others. So, who would I pick if I was the Bundestrainer, if I was to be Christian Wuk? Well, I think based on the current situation, I would not pick Maria Luisa Gross. as one of the 3 goalkeepers going to the tournament because of her health. Obviously, with her health conditions put into consideration, I think 2025 the European Championships will not be a good returning point. But yeah, I think for 2027 in the World Cup and onwards, she would always be a consideration. I think it's going to be difficult for her to dislodge Anna Mahmutovic if Mahmutovic continues to perform well, or maintain her form at least. This is going to be quite an interesting battle in Bayern. So now we're left with 3 choices. With Ann-Katrin Berger, obviously her status as number 1 is going to be challenged, so to say, with her pause. And if the Nations League group thing will be up for debate, we can evaluate the performances of the players further. But as of right now, in this winter break, I think Berger's still going to be number 1, but I think Stina Johannes will be a firm number 2 based on experience and based on Frankfurt's form. But yeah, we'll see how things would develop. And I think to take as a number 3 would be Sofia Winkler. I think Mahmutovic can probably stay at number 4. Or I think with both Mahmutovic and Winkler, I think these 2 are going to be number 3 and 4 interchangeably, and they would probably be whoever performs better will be brought to the tournament. So yeah, this is the goalkeeping squad I would go with Ann-Katrin Berger, and this is the one I'm going without her. Once again, thank you so much for watching. If you want to watch more about women's football, you can subscribe to this channel. Hopefully you will be enlightened and it can provide some sort of value. Alright, thank you so much and goodbye.